Please welcome the panel, guys, as we sort of get rid of that awkward silence. As Justin got somewhat right, I'm Toby Dewar from Foxtel, moderating the panel on all things connected TV and the growth of this platform, which has been spoken about a lot today already. When you factor in whether it's the fast conversation, BVOD, looking at the rise of various social platforms, all encompassing, if you're on a device through a connection, that's what we're going to talk about for the next 30 minutes. What's interesting is that when you look at the consumption, IAS came out with a stat last year that around 92% of people are watching content on a connected device every week. And we've seen that and heard that a lot today in terms of the penetration. It's hard to ignore. But within that, 94% of people believe that the ad experience and the content experience is better than the traditional platforms, linear TV and so on. So there's this disconnect in relation to what's happening. And this is played out by another stat by analytic partners who work with many people in this room. And they did some modelling work which would suggest and sort of quote that there's millions of dollars in revenue being left on the table. They see the market sitting at about 5 to 7% of ad spend in a media plan going towards connected TV. But in their modelling, to really hit that tipping point of return, their argument it should sit between 20, possibly 30. So the audiences are there, the ad experience is better, and we'll unpack that this afternoon, but maybe the market is not necessarily keeping up with that change, that opportunity. The panel this afternoon will go through what's working, what's not, and hopefully we can leave you with a few thoughts to hit the buffet in half an hour about how to better use CTV going forward. Now, I welcome the panel again. I'm going to start with Thad from OMD, who's by and large the custodian of brands on the panel today, looking at a number of brands who are investing in this space. I think it's important to start with a customer's view on where things are tracking, and also to provide your perspective on what the analytic partners data suggests in particular, that may be that gap in the market. So what's CTV in your world, in your role at OMD, mate? What are the opportunities and what are you talking to brands about?
Yeah, I think it's a really, really exciting space. I think we're doing a lot more in that space every year. The growth is exponential, and I think that just come through in everything we've heard today. I think it's going to continue. I think what we're seeing from a ability to use data, targeting, and clients' first-party data is really, really taking the platforms to another level. And the business results we're seeing from that are incredibly strong, actually, from a total connected TV perspective. But when we can overlay clients' first-party data, we're seeing upwards of a 40% increase in performance. So it's a platform we should be investing more into. We are going to see that increase, I would say. We've heard from everyone. That's going to continue. I think as linear moves across to connected TV more and more, investment will follow, and I think it's going to be a great opportunity for clients and advertisers to get on board and do more in that space.
Brilliant. Adele, to your left there, Thad, in terms of where you see it from Index Exchange's perspective, a lot of what has been spoken about is this opportunity for new audiences, perhaps younger audiences. That's almost the positioning you have in market about connecting with new audiences. Again, how do you see the broad CTV market, and in particular when it comes to that notion of building reach quickly? Because what I do recognise that whilst the overall penetration's there, it's been said a few times today that the frequency maybe is not of viewing. So how do you see the reach build play out, and more broadly the role of CTV?
I think it's been a fascinating space to see evolve in the last couple of years. Like, when we talk about the themes that have, proliferated growth, user is becoming the centre and focus of a lot of the conversations. We're hearing it in every discussion today. Is my mic working?
Yeah, just turn face this way.
Oh, apologies. So when we look at ultimately the way that the industry is going to move forward, it has to be with that user focus in view. From a programmatic point of view, which is Index's lens on this space, there needs to be more smarts. With smarts, we're talking about, and apologies, I'll geek out a little bit, the OpenRTB protocols that will enhance signalling between to inform the buyers around the audience at that point in time. So making the inventory hyper-measurable, but also really relevant based on what the advertiser is looking to achieve through their campaign.
Can you unpack that more? You're saying that's to come, that's a change in policy moving forward, so just build that out a bit further.
Yeah, it's a work in progress. So I think the industry has moved very fast to this point. You know, if we look at the history of programmatic, it's about 20 plus years old now. But the BVOD and CTV space is very young in that journey. But it's also very complicated from a technical point of view. And so advancements in technology in the next, I'd say probably 18 months, they're happening now, a number of key ones, but more needs to be done in order to bring that or to realise the vision ultimately of what the advertisers are looking to find from an addressable perspective.
We'll come back to that theme around addressability. Yep. David, I'll go to you. In terms of Unruly's perspective, again, this notion and growth of connected TV is core to your business, but today we've heard a lot from, be it the incumbents, be it local, be it significant global players. The sheer breadth of CTV options, we talk about it from a consumer, from a viewing experience, we said in the last panel, somewhat overwhelming, but from an advertiser's choice perspective, is part of the reason that maybe the dollars aren't flowing as quickly as they could. Is that inhibited by the amount of choice and the different viewing experiences within that?
I don't necessarily think so. I think there's definitely a lag, but I think if you think about it from a customer's perspective, be that agencies and clients and buyers, and also an audience's perspective, I mean, there's never been a better time to be diving into CTV. So I still think there's some testing, there's some trialing that needs to happen, but our role and what we try and encourage when we're speaking with our customers is to dive in and to work with partners that effectively can help you. KK put it nicely in terms of trying to navigate and find a way to maximize the proliferation and the potential out there. There's a lot of fragmentation, but that's an opportunity. So I think when we're working effectively with partners in the industry, but on the supply side, working with Index Exchange, for example, finding a way to pass through that demand and capitalize on the opportunity that's out there. That's, for me, potentially some of the missing link, but I think there's more opportunity out there than audiences and customers missing out on that connection.
So I thought Nat's positioning around their evolution and that acceleration in the next 3 years compared to the 50-year point before, and you've been to this forums before, do you see the market running fast enough to take advantage, or is it, because as a client's managing this conversation alongside the rest of their marketing plan, let alone their business at the moment, how do they shift the right attention to this being an opportunity and take advantage of what you said?
I think working with first of all, working with the right partners that are agnostic in the types of data and measurement that they're deploying, so that you can go and find where that fragmentation exists. I think that shouldn't be a word that I think scares people away from diving into CTV. I think fragmentation is about opportunity. We know that the audiences are shifting from linear, and I think that's been well documented for a while. That's not a bad thing. It means that the audiences are there. They just need to be stitched together using really good sources of data, using really good IDs, for example, and using really robust measurements. So I think we will be catching up pretty quickly. There's a lot of new players in the market, some that have been around for a little while, but we're still quite nascent in terms of all of the new entrants into CTV and into FAST in particular. So I think we'll start to see that acceleration pretty quickly.
Laura, build on that, the level of speed and change, and we've already seen some, from Nat's presentation, the role of FAST in your platform and the continuation of the growth of BVOD. How do you see the market, and what are you talking to clients about?
Well, there's been a lot touched on already today about the fact that total TV is still kind of the most effective and impactful. So I think what we're looking at is advertisers trying to find audiences in environments that mirror what linear TV still offers, but that is obviously becoming more fragmented. So they'll first go to BVOD, second to SVOD platforms, and I think we're talking about brand safe, premium content at scale. And what we really need to look for is, finding those environments where that scale comes. So, Toby, binge has obviously been a fairly effective strategy in bringing that kind of basic tier across to the ad tier model. I've heard rumorings in markets that that's about a 400K audience. So just to provide context to that number, Home and Away last night did double that. So the audience is still there with linear and BVOD. And so when we're talking about scale, we just need to keep it all in perspective, I think. With Fast, so at 7, we've got sort of 3 core strategic pillars for our content across 7+. So live, fast, and VOD. And we acquire content sort of with all of those in mind.
Brilliant. When you're moderating your panel, you can't talk back on things like binge, but we'll let that one go through the keeper. That right?
There's been a bit of Netflix bashing. It's obviously very early days. Like we've only launched in sort of November. So I think, it took BVOD a long time to get to where it got to.
Yeah.
And Netflix is coming from a part where it already has scale. It's just got to get the adaptation. So I think, that part sort of is a key factor that we should all take into consideration. It's not there yet. It may not get there, but it took us a long time to get there from other platforms too.
So just on that point, and again, what will be the learning from the Netflix point that you brought it up? It's part of the topic this afternoon and been discussed a few times. And I agree with the comment made earlier that at some point they will get it right, given the scale of their platform. What positive do you take from that in terms of what the market's learned? And are you having to hold some clients' hands to make sure they don't necessarily focus on what's happened, but what will happen next, more importantly?
I think it's a journey. It's going to be one of those ones where, KK touched on it earlier, we need to test and learn and see whether the premium we're paying to reach a different type of audience is worth it. And I think that will come over time and we'll get those learnings. But I think, the scale that could come from it potentially is something that we'll have to wait and see. I think this was sort of the predictions and what we're sort of looking at the moment, we're all sort of guessing at the moment.
So certainty is a part of that. Phil, from your perspective, I know you sat uncomfortably in your chair when Guy did the presentation this morning around the growth of 10 Play and the opportunity there. You've got the floor, mate. You've got the moment. I don't know where Guy is, but let's just assume he's front and centre, down the barrel of the camera, mate. Talk to us about the growth that's happening from BVOD with 10 Play. And then secondly, what's the role of fast channels, the pending launch of Pluto in this market? Unpack that from a Paramount perspective.
Yeah, thanks for that, Toby. Yeah, so firstly, just with respect to 10 Play, we're experiencing our highest year, 18% growth year to date, so year on year. So that's a positive start to the year. But I think all boats are rising with the tide with respect to BVOD and sort of ad-supported sort of platforms as we've discussed. I think just taking a step back with respect to Paramount, we're in a very fortunate position with respect to us being a global company with heavy investment both globally and locally in content. We obviously represent sort of platforms across broadcast linear, pay TV, streaming, which has been touched on with 10 Play. We've also got one of the fastest growing sort of domestic platforms in Paramount Plus. And furthermore, obviously, the launch of fast channels, which has been well documented, and there's been a hell of a lot of chat around fast today. So at Paramount, we've got 18 channels live across 10 Play at the moment from a fast perspective. Again, there's been some themes pulled through today of the role of single show and genre specific. Probably the 4 biggest ones that have gone nuts across the platform at the moment have been Baywatch and Survivor from a show level perspective, but probably come as no surprise from an Australian perspective, our obsession with true crime. That's been the number one across the platform. And then obviously, well not obviously, but retro cartoons is one as well, which when we talk about new audiences or reconnecting with old audiences based on nostalgia, we're seeing classics like Cat Dog and Ren and Stimpy go nuts as well across the platform. So to sort of bring that to life, what we're seeing across BVOD with respect to the likes of Seven West Media and Paramount measured by OzTam is we're seeing about a 5% consumption of overall viewership across BVOD being through fast channels. So that's about 14% of live, which is, when you think about broadcast and live, about a 60-40. So ultimately what we're looking to do is we're looking to really elevate the role of data and product. And what that will mean is, as we continue to sort of be excited by the essential competition that exists across the market with respect to new streaming players come in, I think it'll keep us honest. I think it'll challenge us in terms of discussions around ad experience, around ad loads. It'll challenge us with respect to how immersive and innovative ad product can be. And I think through this session, I think we'll probably unpick some of the tactics around how data and product is a joined up solution with respect to how we commercialise and create value for advertisers and brands through engaging in these platforms.
Now, about 12 months ago in this room, there was a lot of talk about ad experience and it frankly being not good enough, and fair to say that conversation has moved forward. Again, I'll start with you, Thad, from where you see it as a buyer, a planner across a number of brands. Is that concern around ad experience, things like frequency we discussed in a large degree that day, where do you see the market and has it moved forward since the last chat we had 12 months ago?
Yeah, it's definitely improved a lot. I think the networks working alongside the agencies and clients together should take great heart from that. It's a lot better. I think everyone can attest to the experience is a lot better. There are still challenges, and I think the biggest challenge is not, 80% of BVOD or catch-up is traded programmatically. And I think with frequency caps from both sides, and I think it's managed pretty well. I think the challenge comes from those direct buys and sponsorships. And I think we all sort of have felt that pain over the last 2 years, really. And I think it's broken into 3 areas. And I think the first one is that obviously the audience has changed. So linear's dropped off and a lot more people are going into the BVOD or connected TV version to watch those shows. Now, forecasting that is incredibly difficult, I'm sure, for the networks and the growth that's sort of come through. So that's really hard. So what do you do with those impressions? They're obviously your clients who are sponsors of that show have paid a premium to be involved in there. Do you open that up, or do you just run house ads? It's a big challenge for the networks of what to do with those. So or do you just add in more sponsors who are just on a BVOD level? So there's challenges around that. What's traditionally happened is that the impressions have gone back into the sponsors as either make good for linear or just as a bonus because they're paying a premium for it. Now, the challenge with that is the same technology in the past hasn't been applied to those properties. That is from a programmatic perspective, and experience from a consumer perspective is actually worse because they're seeing 2 or 3 ads in the same program, and the experience has been worse. So, that is the challenge where it's a really tough one for the networks, don't get me wrong, and it's improved dramatically even in that sponsorship and direct space over the last 6 months. But that is the bigger challenge and ongoing issue, because as the audiences increase and trying to forecast for those increases, what do you do with those impressions?
So it's a fundamental part of this chat in and around different marketplaces, different ways of buying, different currencies, different views on premium rights. So let's just stay on that point. Laura, from your perspective, how do you respond to that sort of dual marketplace when it's ultimately, as has been mentioned a lot today, the viewer's the viewer, they don't really care about how that gets there?
Exactly. Yeah, I think if we think about a sponsorship and you've got 2 households next to each other, one with an aerial and one with an internet feed, that viewer doesn't think the way that we do about digital and linear. They just want to watch the sponsorship. And so, when you talk about someone on a BVOD feed being served 2 or 3 ads, that is the experience that they're having on linear. And so it should be mirrored. We make sponsorships available programmatically, and so they can be frequency capped, but you shouldn't be applying a different strategy for your BVOD than what you are for your linear. And I think we do obviously have the opportunity to bring in additional advertisers programmatically.
I think in the past, it's been a big issue though. It's been a huge issue for clients and sponsors, because and in theory they're paying for more premium, and potentially their ads are getting a worse customer experience in the past.
So Adele, from your perspective, just jumping in on that from a programmatic, having that access to all the inventory and being able to see that differently, way into this conversation about where it sits at the moment and perhaps where it could be better.
Yeah, from Index's perspective, and I guess with the programmatic lens on it, there is, I think, a lot more power to be unlocked as we go from a technological advancement perspective. If we look at the world that we have with, sorry, I know linear is the wrong terminology, but aerials versus cables, there's a lot we can be doing to bring that together and create that more unified view of not only the audience, but also the inventory. And so when you start to layer on those smarts into the buying and empower the buyers, the advertisers themselves, to map out what is the ultimate buy, and then tech just needs to facilitate it. there's a lot coming, I think, and a lot of the industry needs to start to get behind some of the larger open RTB specs. I spoke about this very briefly before, but consistency and a common language from the tech perspective will actually help us all get there quicker, and hopefully ultimately realise that vision where, you know, advertisers aren't left in the lurch, and, you know, broadcasters are ultimately maximising every potential ad spot that they have.
So David, just again weighing into this conversation from your perspective, first I'll let you build on what's been discussed already, and I've got a follow-up, but again, how do you see the market, and to what Adele's saying, there's changes coming, but does it need to move faster?
I think the opportunity from an experience perspective for us has always been about data, and we have a really strong view on making sure that you've got data as the backbone to everything you're doing within a digital TV and a CTV environment, across the spectrum of planning, activating and measuring. And I think you have to be, you know, we've got to be honest with ourselves at the moment. There are some limitations around, you know, the types of data that you can use, but there is a lot of data. So it is about unifying that as best as you can. It's about working with partners that are able to unify that into an ID, and then being agnostic with the types of you know, supply partners that you're working with to execute and bring that to life. I think experience can also be enhanced quite a lot. We heard from Nicola this morning on you know, the creative enhancements that you can be making within a digital TV environment. And that's the beauty of you know, trying to essentially enhance what you're doing in a linear environment, but making it better with digital potential. So,
and go forward on that, mate. So in relation to the way you would execute that from an Unruly perspective is, no matter the device, perhaps that ability to stitch a conversation or a creative across device is where you see good occurring when it comes to CTV moving forward.
Right, yeah, so, you know, being able to use an ID to make sure that, you know, you are looking after things like frequency capping, or you're following, you know, the journey of a user, even being able to take that off into other video environments. I think it's a really powerful way to extend your creative message. And then the types of things that you can do within a creative environment. So, you know, we saw a few examples this morning with Finecast. There's lots of different ways that you can do to make ads, you know, more engaging, more shoppable, more action-oriented. I think these are the types of things that, you know, we get really excited about when we speak with clients who are diving into digital TV and CTV about, you know, TV itself has set the standard for such a long time of a great creative experience. How can digital make it better? And that's really, I guess, one of the areas that, you know, we try and encourage the conversation around increasing your spends and increasing your presence within CTV.
And Phil, from your perspective, in relation to your background as working in big focus on ROI and your experience with Agile, but talking about the role of partners like David, how do you see that the role of collaboration in, again, better executing the role of CTV on a plan?
Yeah, it's critical. So proof performance is a significant pillar of what we're focused on. And there's been a lot of themes today around transparency and how partnering can help build trust and essentially lead to right pricing as well for the role of impressions across BVOD as a platform. We think about levelling up the impressions. So what that means is it's about, again, using data and product innovation together. We work with brands, with safe havens and sort of clean rooms like the likes of LiveRamp to be able to bring data into our ecosystem to profile and tell brands information around their first-party data that they didn't otherwise know. That can help, for example, drive better targeting. It can help drive suppression in terms of making that marketing dollar work a little bit harder. But furthermore, I think the role of frequency, I think there was some work, benchmark series last year from Agile around the role of frequency, and essentially the ability to be able to sort of play with that a little bit more. I know there's always extreme examples that get often spoken about, but depending on the business objective that you're looking to drive, a more a greater frequency can look to drive a performance outcome. So I think with regards to data matching, it's about looking to drive a more considered use of that marketing dollar. I think it's not always about overlaying nth degree of data. It's about building scalable solutions. But some of the things that we're doing with the likes of Curve and Innovid, allowing users to interact with the ads, be it through a second screen mobile device, be it through a remote, and essentially allow users to engage with brands in different ways, earn time engaging with the brand on their terms, And ultimately, everything that we do, it's allowing us to provide more insight around those that are engaging with those ads, allowing refinement for future campaigns, and most importantly, from an ROI perspective, ensuring that either we're producing the ROI, working with the likes of Agile or TV Squared Innovid, or we're through safe and secure passing back of the log level data, passing it back into those brands' mature attribution systems so that they can essentially understand the role of BVOD and essentially elevating the role from a pure play brand or reach play to more of those performance metrics, sort of driving through brand consideration all the way through to a return on investment piece. So that's the conversations that we're really excited as the market matures in terms of how they're using connected TV.
Brilliant. Thad, on this topic of attention or this topic of not all platforms are created equal. So therefore, whether it's opportunity to see, viewability, whether it's big screen, there's a lot of factors in regards to CTV that is different. Ultimately, it's been discussed a bit today, whether you pay a premium, whether that is binge or whether that's the likes of Netflix. Where do you sit in relation to that opportunity to narrow down into environments like that? And does it warrant a premium? And in particular, do things like attention play a role within that?
Attention plays a huge role in, I think, most agencies' screens planning now. Most agencies will have a screens planning model, which must be really challenging for the networks because I'm sure they're all different. And hopefully when we get VOZ in place, that will, I guess, assist that. But then just on that point, that's only going to cover off potentially 60% of the investment in screens. So every agency still has to run their own screens methodology that covers off cinema, all the other channels as well. So once again, really tough for the networks because everyone's coming to them with a different methodology on how they approach screens. But I guess coming back to the attention point, it's a huge factor. We take it in consideration. We work with Amplified Intelligence, as a lot of other agencies do. And I think the big point about that is kind of whether we pay a premium is a big question because in a lot of the areas, we're already paying a premium. For the areas that potentially have a higher attention, we're already paying a premium for. We're paying a premium more for sport.
You're talking simple, almost supply and demand there in terms of those properties, eh?
Yeah, I mean, it's 100% premium plus for most of the tentpoles or sport programs, so we're already paying a premium there. So I think if we do start going down that route, and I know that's something that's being explored around, should we pay more for higher attention, which in theory has already been allocated because of the cost of different media, but should we pay more? The answer is maybe, but on the flip side, are we going to pull down the cost of areas that are less attention? No, that's not going to happen, is it? So all that will happen is clients will end up paying more in general for the same media, just in a different way. So I think if we are going to go down that route, it has to be a way that we are finding a balance because we, as fundamentally as our agencies, we're trying to spend our advertisers' money as effectively as possible to drive as attentive reach that drives, short or long-term outcomes for our clients. And doing that as efficiently as possible doesn't mean that we should pay more for something we're already paying for.
So let you jump in on that. You look as if you're ready to return to that point. Go.
We're squirming. Well, I just think like attention metrics, and we've done attention studies, and it really just validates what we already know. Like those scrolling medias do not hold the same attention, and so rather than necessarily charging a load, and I'll never say never, but I think what it does is it shows us the true value of those CPMs, and so we have that metric to provide context. Talking about sort of loads and effectiveness with, as Phil touched on, high-value audiences, yes, there should be a premium charge there. As an example, we had a banking client recently where we used Equifax home loan intender targeting rather than their usual demo approach, and 50% of the sign-ups that they got off the back of that campaign were outside of their demo. So yes, that's a highly effective audience that we've overlaid, and that should be charged as a premium.
So Adele, to that point, that the role of data, remove attention, Adele, you think that the role of data is probably where the conversation is better placed to better inform the audience you're effectively buying?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the power behind everything that's going to move the industry forward as we go. The more we know about the user, the environment, their interests, how much content they're consuming. All of these different data points will help enhance and inform a lot of decisions moving forward. It could be around the way that you're structuring your content and then your podding, your ad pods. It could be something as, back on the campaign side of things, how you're executing against it, the types of, maybe a different demographic that you're looking to target or different data set. There's a lot more, and I think that's one of the beautiful things about the space in which we work, and we're here at a very digital-focused event. It is very measurable, and with more and more data that comes in, the ability to analyse that will add a lot of insights to businesses to help inform strategies as we move forward. So for me, and I hope everyone in this room shares the same view, like data is kind of everything that underpins what we do.
And David, you've mentioned a similar point on data a few times now. Can you again build on that in terms of what you think that further unlocks as opportunity for CTV?
I mean, I think it's about a growth mindset. The more that you can find and stitch together from a fragmented audience perspective, are more potential customers that you're putting in front of brands, and ultimately, that's going to give marketers a better opportunity to connect, convert, drive more sales. So, we have to be looking for ways to stitch that opportunity together.
Brilliant. Now, we're pretty much on time. I'm going to finish that with you. As you've sat and listened to this, we've heard themes around the complexity. We've certainly heard themes about the opportunity. We know that spend's moving there, and really talking about that opportunity to better understand what you're buying and perhaps what others are buying too, you've mentioned. What's success for you? We're back here in 12 months' time again, and we've moved this conversation forward. What do you hope comes out of today's chat, not just now, but across the day?
I'm hoping that we're all coming back here and talking about how great VOZ is, and it's something that's up and running. I hope then we're all starting to talk about how we can start to incorporate other areas into that, because the more we put into a unified platform, the better it is for agencies, advertisers to actually deliver on buying really effective media and market. And I think that if we could get to that point and be starting that next conversation, having VOZ up and running, it will help from all aspects, from a agency, client and partner perspective in here.
Brilliant. We're now in between you and lunch. I might invite Jason back up on stage. Sorry, Justin, I think it is.
I deserve that. Yeah, I screwed up your name. I know.
No, we're good, mate. So, ladies and gentlemen, please thank the panel for their chat this afternoon. We might just hold.